So we're going to talk about how you can solve two-step equations. Now, the reason they're called two-step equations is they have two different operations. You'll see right up here, 3x is multiplication, 3 times x, and we also have subtraction here. So two different operations means it's going to take 2 steps to solve this equation. And when you're solving an equation, the idea is that you want to get your variable all by itself, which means the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this part of our equation and move it, get rid of it, and then we're going to deal with this variable, the coefficient in front of the variable. So we've got 2 steps to solve this problem. And the last thing we need to keep in mind when we're solving an equation is that we have to keep it equal. So anything we do on the left side of the equation, we also have to do on the right side. And solving equations are going to follow the same steps. They're going to get a little more complex as your problems get more complicated, but our last 2 steps, or in this case our first 2 steps because it's only a 2-step equation, is that first we're going to undo our addition and subtraction in our problem, and then the next thing we're going to do is undo the multiplication and division we have. So when we say undo, it means you're going to do the opposite, because remember the idea is we want to get this x all by itself. So if I have 3x minus 5, I have to undo this minus 5, make it a 0. And that's how we're going to get rid of it and isolate that variable. So I want you to think about what's the opposite of subtraction. How do I undo subtraction? And the way I undo subtraction is by using addition. So if you look, if I have negative 5 plus 5, that equals 0. And so these two numbers are going to cancel out. They're going to undo each other. But I can't undo the subtraction on one side of my problem without doing the same thing on the other side of my equal sign, because that's what keeps it balanced. So to simplify this, my 5 and my negative 5 cancel out. On the left side of my equation, I have 3x, and on my right side of the equation, I have 19 plus 5 will give me 24. Okay, so I have 3x equals 24. So the next step I'm going to do is I need to undo the multiplication that I see right here, 3 times x. And to undo multiplication, you do the opposite of it, you divide. And you're always going to divide by whatever your coefficient is. Because remember, the ultimate goal is we want to get the x by itself. So if I do 3 divided by 3, that's going to leave me with 1x. Now I have to do the same division on the right side of my equal sign. So 24 divided by 3 equals 8. And sometimes you'll see this problem written 1x equals 8, but most of the time you'll just see it as x equals 8. Because remember, this 1, that's one of those invisible math terms that we have where you don't actually have to have the 1 in front. So x equals 8, what does that mean? That means if I were to take this equation, oops, I have it twice here. If I were to take this equation and then substitute this value for x into my problem, and then I solve this part of my equation, it's going to equal 19. So let me show you. If I have 3x, which is 3 times 8, minus 5, what we're saying is that should equal 19. So let's try it out. Order of operations. Multiply first. 3 times 8 is 24. So if I do 24 minus 5, that should equal 19, and it does. 24 minus 5 is 19. Since these two numbers are equal, that means I substituted in the correct value for my variable. So the answer to this problem is x equals 8. Now, there's one more thing we can add to a 2-step equation, and that's our distributive property. We know we need the distributive property when we have these parentheses. We still need to undo our addition and our subtraction, but before we can get to this variable, we have to first use our distributive property to get rid of our parentheses. We can't do anything to our variable if our parentheses are there. So 2 times 2x is going to give me 4x. 2 times negative 4, remember that's a negative 4 there, is going to give me negative 8. So now that I've used my distributive property, this equation is just like what we were doing before. It's a 2-step equation. I'm going to undo this subtraction. The opposite of subtraction is addition, so I'm going to add 8 on both sides because we have to keep it equal. And remember, when I have a negative 8 plus 8, that equals 0. So we've eliminated that. and I'm left with 4x equals 16. So now my next step is I have to undo the multiplication I see right here. 4 times x, so the opposite of times 4 is divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 equals 1, so I have just x on this side. And 16 divided by 4 is 4. Okay? And again, what does this mean? This means if I were to take this equation and I were to substitute this value for x into this equation, it's going to equal 8. So instead of x, I'm going to put a 4 here. Okay, and then we're going to solve this using order of operations. Remember, parentheses comes first. So I have to do what's inside my parentheses, and there are actually 2 steps. So 2 times 4 is 8. And now I'm going to finish off what's inside my parentheses here. I'm going to do 8 minus 4, which is 4. And then just finishing off this problem, my last step, 2 times 4 here, is 8. So since we got a correct answer, 8 equals 8, we know our variable that we substituted in is correct, which means my answer to this problem was x equals 4.